Ya Palingana. My name is Greg Lehman. I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Aboriginal Leadership here at the University of Tasmania. I'm a Palawa man. I'm descended from the Trollway people of northeastern Tasmania and also a proud alumni of this university. I'd like to welcome you here to Muwinina country, and I ask that we all acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people today who honour the Muwinina memory by continuing their custodial responsibilities to protect and respect country and to maintain this island's first and original culture. On behalf of the University of Tasmania, I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Island of Ideas talk, Voice to Truth, a voice for generations. This is the first of 3 discussions we are hosting exploring the upcoming national Voice to Parliament referendum. I'd like to firstly acknowledge Aboriginal elders and Aboriginal community members who are joining us here in person tonight or online, and also acknowledge our Chancellor, Alison Watkins AM. In 2023, there will be a referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament to be enshrined in the Constitution. If a yes vote is received, the Australian Parliament can then legislate the voice. As the only university in Tasmania, we aim to create a rich and productive community discussion on this subject, guided by people who have been and will be impacted by the history of this conversation and by the future that it creates. Rather than influence the outcome, we seek to shape the quality of the debate. I was born in 1961, just 4 years before Charles Perkins, one of only 2 Aboriginal students enrolled at the time in the University of Sydney, led the Student Action for Aborigines group on their famous Freedom Ride. Their Freedom Ride was inspired by the campaign against racial segregation in the United States. And this student action exposed the existence of similar policies that denied equal rights to Aboriginal people in Australia. As a young university student, Charlie could not have imagined the future changes that he would play a key role in making over the following 3 decades. However, I suspect that 23 years on from his passing, he would also not be surprised that there is still much to be done, which, more than anything else, is the reason we are all here tonight to discuss the proposed referendum to establish an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Charlie, as a University of Sydney student back in 1965, along with the non-Aboriginal fellow students making up Student Action for Aborigines, could not be certain of what the consequences of their campaign might be. But they knew they were in the business of influencing the future, and they knew that their passion for equality and their belief in the necessity of justice would guide their aspirations. Nearly 60 years later, we stand at another key point in Australia's history as we consider the arguments for and against the proposed voice to Parliament. Over the coming months, the University of Tasmania will host 3 panel events to critically consider the history behind the idea of an Indigenous voice to Parliament, the public debate, and the issues it has raised. However, for tonight's panel, we will begin with a critical consideration of the future. Our university's greatest futurists are our students, because it is they who, through their time here, are formulating and crafting that future. The future, if you like, belongs to them. The panellists here tonight are all students at the University of Tasmania. They will have diverse views about the arguments for and against the proposed voice. But we're not here tonight to be convinced of anyone's arguments. Instead, our panellists have been invited to share with us their perspectives, their aspirations, and their vision for Australia after the referendum, whatever the outcome. So what does our future look like after a Voice to Parliament referendum? And how can we best support the creation of a more just Australia for all of us? It is my great pleasure to introduce our panellists now. Our first speaker is a Palawa woman who is currently completing her Year 12 studies. I understand she's already getting herself enrolled in the university. She is the community chair at her school and a strong activist with a passion for human and First Nations rights. Arya has co-facilitated Come Walk With Us workshops for 3 years and is a member of the Alliance for the Tasmanian Human Rights Act, appearing as a speaker at a rally for the Human Rights Act in November of last year. Arya has been involved in various panels and public speaking. Most recently, she gave a talk during Reconciliation Week at Claremont College and appeared on the panel at the Early Childhood Australia Reconciliation Symposium. Please join me in welcoming Arya Ritz.
Hi everyone. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge my elders past and present. I would also like to acknowledge that this is Aboriginal land, and as well as that, I would like to acknowledge the power of education. So I'm a proud Palawa woman and I am currently leading my Year 12 studies. And I just wanted to talk to you a bit about my perspective and my views on the voice. So to begin with, I wanted to talk to you about how we've always had a voice, politically and nationally. We've always had a voice in this nation. We've just never been listened to. What makes this time different? Why should we trust this time? Is it like, will the government and white people listen because it's on their terms? There have been so many previous advisory bodies in the Australian government that haven't got up off the ground or have just been ignored altogether. So what makes this different? Yes, it can be enshrined into the Constitution, but there is no legal requirement for the body to actually be actively listened to. Chapter 9 in the Constitution, Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the new part will read, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice may make representations to the Parliament and executive government. There's no reason that the government is going to actually listen. As well as this, I would also like to touch on the fact that I personally find the voice to Parliament concept veering into the area of sort of a white saviour perspective. Yes, this whole thing is well and good. Media coverage and conversations about life expectancy and everything that is impacting Aboriginal people is great. But the thing that I personally find challenging to grasp is we have our own governing systems as Aboriginal people. We have our own way of doing things. We have got a voice and we have had it for a substantial amount of time. We have and do lobby and pressure the government. What is an advisory body going to do? This body has zero power. From my perspective, I see the government saying, oh, yes, good job us. We're helping the Aboriginal people and giving them a voice and recognising them in our constitution. The constitution that was established when our land was colonised. We've been asking for action for years. Australia Day, Invasion Day, we still have that going in to this referendum. We still have that. The date hasn't been changed and it hasn't been abolished by the government. We are also the last country in the Commonwealth to have a treaty with our First Peoples. I find it disappointing that this referendum is practically the crumbs of what we're asking for and we're just having to settle. We deserve real power, real change and real action. What we need in Canberra is ears, not a voice. That's a quote from the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. The uncertainty and unclearness of the actual structure and workings of this voice is troubling. How can we make an informed decision as Australians of the voice if we are unaware of the structure and the use of this voice? It is merely just a concept. Our people are the most incarcerated people in the world. Our people are dying in custody at the hands of those who should protect them, dying from substance abuse, dying from lack of mental health support because of the severity of intergenerational trauma in our community. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have the highest suicide rate in Australia. Indigenous Australians are the least employed group in Australia. Return of land is less than 1% in Tasmania. We're the most disadvantaged group of people on our own land. So yeah, the voice is great, but what we need and what we want is action. While I was writing my notes for this last night, I was listening to my playlist of my favourite black artists, and one of my favourite songs came on, Black Matriarchy by Barker. The first line of this song is, "I'm tired of begging and asking for humanity. When is it enough?" And I feel like that says it all. Constitutional recognition is great, but what we need is action. From a youth point of view, the statement from the heart in general is very hard to grasp and understand, and forming an opinion is really confusing. It's hard to find straightforward education without a bias, and often the information is written from the yes point of view. I really think that, with the yes and no pamphlets coming out really recently, I was reading the no one. I read both, but I read the no one, and I thought that they really struck something with the "if you don't know, vote no." And I think capitalising on people's confusion and lack of education was a major thing that they have done to put the yes campaign down. As well as this, I see political view as a spectrum. The polarisation of people's opinions is something I see to be detrimental to the quality of the voice referendum. There is so much pressure to fall to either side to know if you're voting yes or no, and then to be able to immediately justify your opinion as such. The impact on Aboriginal people this referendum has had has personally been quite hard for me. It's really hard seeing the divide in my community as well as the general public. I feel that the cultural safety in public has really gone down with the referendum. Hearing people talk about how Aboriginal people don't deserve to be heard is gut-wrenching, and it's really hard. Having rights, like our rights, so publicly debated is really challenging. It's a really challenging environment to be in from an Aboriginal perspective. The concept of someone debating and deciding your rights and your validity, it's pretty hard to grasp, and I feel like everyone can see from that perspective and think about that. Deep reflection, I feel, is really important in this time. I believe it's really important to reflect deeply on the process of the voice and where it came from. The voice was conceived outside of grassroots First Nations movements that have been calling for treaty, justice, and land rights for decades. And I'm not sure about you, but at no point have I seen Aboriginal people, my community, marching the streets saying, "I want to be part of the Constitution." So I think that reflection on that, things like that, is paramount. My aspirations for the future is a more equitable and fair Australia. I would like us to be heard, not just heard, but listened to, and our opinions and what we're asking to be acted upon. Real truth-telling and recognition and treaty is something that I really want to see in the future of Australia. As allies, it's really important to be active. Being an active ally, you need to take accountability, I think, is something that I really preach when I talk about being an active ally. Taking accountability for yourself and for when you are not quite sure. Being a safe person for Aboriginal people and for people to ask questions, and being willing to educate yourself and those around you. Try not to be scared, because the biggest mistake has already happened. Organisation. Ultimately, I want to sum up by saying, before you ask me what I'm going to vote, I will be voting yes for the fear of what no will bring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arya. I think that's a really important reminder to us that this is not a stark yes or no, black and white proposition. It is a complex and challenging one. I think really important point that Arya made there was that Aboriginal people have had a voice, have been calling for justice, for return of land, for the keeping of promises made, and for treaties since the arrival of the British. What's been missing has been listening and action, so surely that's the biggest challenge on the part of those who, if the referendum is successful, have the task of implementing. I'd like to now introduce Duncan Robinson, our next speaker. Duncan's a proud Aboriginal man and I'm going off script here, I hope you'll forgive me, Duncan, also a reminder that nearly 50% of the students at the University of Tasmania are mature age students. They're not just coming out of year 12 as Arya is, but often re-entering education. Duncan is in the final stages of his PhD, which looks at the experiences of Aboriginal students at the University of Tasmania and how they navigate content that contains their own stories, histories, culture and issues that affect them. He also teaches in the subjects Indigenous life world, sovereignty, justice and society, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health and wellbeing. Please welcome to the floor Duncan Robinson.
Yapling everyone. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of knowledge. That's how I normally start my things. So for me, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges have been disregarded, disrespected and destroyed during the process of colonisation, which is ongoing. However, our elders past and present have continued to maintain and evolve and create our knowledges, and these will continue to inform our cultural practices and our identity and our rights. So they're really important. The first thing I would like to talk about is how I'm going to share things tonight. One thing for me when I discuss things around Aboriginal issues is how I actually share it. So initially I want to highlight that I'm going to be passionate. Now, there's something else that underlines my passion, which I'm not actually going to tell you about right now. I will give you a tip, and this is, I'm going to talk a lot about homework because I'm going to go completely off script here by the looks of it, is that if you haven't seen the Miranda Tapsell thing from Get Crackin', then that's where I'm going to be going. So what does the voice mean to me? I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to share my perspective. I'm not going to talk about it because this isn't what I think non-Indigenous Australians should be doing. That is because we've been sharing our stories for quite a long time, and Ari and Greg have already mentioned this. For the record, if you tell me you can't find our stories, you're not looking hard enough. Gosh, it's already out there. And at the moment, I would say the Aboriginal stuff, we're kind of on point at the moment. So get in there. Where I really want to begin is unpacking this idea of the term that we hear a lot nowadays, and that is truth-telling. Firstly, I would never say that truth-telling is a bad thing. Truth-telling is essential for non-Indigenous Australians to understand our stories. Truth-telling comes from us. Truth-telling comes from Aboriginal people. It comes from Torres Strait Islander people. It comes from the community that you live in. Critical to that, though, is that the truth always comes from our voices. So for me, when I think about that word, it needs to be flipped around when you're looking at it from a non-Indigenous perspective. Non-Indigenous people need to see that word and transfer it into their brain into something else. That for me is truth listening. And now I'm feeling like that Arya stolen all of my points. But it's something that we always need to go back to, because I think people have forgotten what listening really means. Truth listening is a concept that I've been playing a lot with in cultural awareness sessions over the last few years. Truth listening is about deeply engaging with Aboriginal stories. Now, for me, one really important thing when it comes to truth listening, and the really beautiful thing about what's happening out there with the discourse around the voice, is that you are hearing different perspectives, which is great, because as much as we're arguing, which is what we're really good at doing, you're seeing that there's complexity within Aboriginal communities. Truth listening, when you go to our histories and our stories, it can be hard, and it does sometimes feel uncomfortable. Sitting with that discomfort, though, is important if you really want to be an ally. So whilst it can be hard and it can hurt, it does have a purpose. So from there, the question I would put to you is, what do you know? But also importantly, how have you learnt it? One thing that we don't unpack enough of is the lens that we were given through our early educational days. I was taught in high school that Truganini was the last full-blood Tasmanian Aboriginal. And I know of that. Look, the education system, yes, granted, it's come a heck of a long way since then, but I still know of that happening. And things like that don't help our stories, which is why if you are engaging with someone and that your kids are coming home and telling people this, that's confronting for mainly the Aboriginal kids sitting in the spaces and hearing those stories. So when I talk about how much do you know of your stories, how much have you engaged with? So what I really want to think about is a concept about reciprocity, which is really important in Aboriginal culture. When you want to learn about something, particularly if you're coming to an event like this, and you want to learn about our perspectives, you need to come with knowledge. You need to demonstrate that you are willing to possibly either begin or maintain a relationship that is going to be somewhat of an equal playing field. What I'm talking about there is that when non-Indigenous people come to us and say, tell us stuff, that is extractive. What we are saying is, come to us with knowledge already there, because then we can have a dialogue based in reciprocity where I feel like you know something. If you rock up and you tell me, I don't know nothing, can you tell me all about the colonisation of Tasmania, and you want me to share my trauma, that is extractive and it is hard work. So I want to play with some stereotypes a little bit. Think about what is the percentage, actually Arya brought up, the youth incarceration. The statistics are really horrifying, and I don't like going down statistics, but it's something that you should know about. But why are those statistics there? So for me, I would want you to think about, how would you feel if a report was written about your people that was then misrepresented by people in power? How would you feel if those people in power made an assumption that all your men, all your fathers, uncles, brothers, grandfathers were all pedophiles? Now, if that sounds messed up, it is pretty messed up. If you're a young boy back at that time, seeing your role models treated in that way, and also portrayed in the media by the dominant culture, how would you feel? Would you continue to do as you're told by white society? Would you play nice and do what was expected? Or would you possibly get a bit angry, maybe play up, maybe get into trouble? The Tasmanian context is, wait a minute, that's right, because in the Northern Territory where all the Aboriginal people are, when we send our young kids to the Northern Territory, because that's where culture is, to fix them. So if that stuff doesn't get you angry, if that was happening in your culture with your people, how would you feel? The other thing I want to revisit here is the closing the gap. So you should be familiar with that. If you're listening in here, you know that we've got a new bunch of closing the gap requirements that government are wanting to play with. But I want to visit the 2008 to 2018 model. Now, you should be aware of what those targets were. You should know that there was a bunch of them, which ones were met and which ones weren't. Because when we look at that, that's critical to where we are with whether or not we are being listened to as Aboriginal people. You should know that which organisations receive money, which organisations put on particular programs, how many organisations were Aboriginal owned and operated. Was funding consistent or not? The reason you need to know is because you'll be able to find out how Aboriginal voices have been listened to. For those who don't know, the end of that closing the gap story is terrible. Yep. And I'm also realising that I have to put in my non-swearing voice because that comes out sometimes. It's something that makes me passionate and makes me a bit angry. So the real reason why homework is so important for me is because it means then you can do some of the work. Ari's mentioned, and it's something that I talk a lot about as well, this idea of being an ally. We want allies. Allies are important. But what is your job as an ally? If you know me a little bit, we've got a bit of a relationship, and maybe you meet me on a particular day, I don't know, near the end of January, and we go for a bit of a walk down the street. At the end of the march, I go, hey, do you want a cookie? It's got an Aboriginal flag on it. And you go, brilliant, that's lovely. It's an ally cookie. I'm like, that's great. What's that? We're heading off to your uncle's barbecue. Oh, yeah, I'll come along. And then old uncle, random name that I don't want to use because everyone's got an Uncle Frank, says something messed up. It's not my job to say, hey, Uncle Frank, that's based in a stereotype and not really nice. Yep, because that's when we have to share something that comes from our heart and our guts and it makes us feel rubbish. A true ally, actually, I prefer the term accomplice because accomplices are willing to get into trouble. I don't know your Uncle Frank, and if I call him a racist person, you might want a bit of a Barney about it. But you've got a relationship with Uncle Frank because you love him because he's your family. Well, love in a sort of a family way. You're the one who has to have a chat with him because you've got a relationship. It shouldn't be up to me. A true accomplice, someone who understands us, can look to me and go, "You're not up to it today, are you, Duncan?" I'm like, "No, because that march was pretty intense." "All right, I'll take it on. I'm the one going to have the yarn." Because what I'm playing with you is that why are people asking us about our perspective of the voice when you should be talking to everyone else about it? What I'm getting at here is reciprocity and what it looks like. And you know, it's about sharing our stories and our perspectives. Reciprocity is understanding that sometimes maybe we just want to talk about other stuff because you should know how we feel about our stories. We only ever get asked our opinions about, oh, what do you think about the incarceration rates? What do you think about the high statistics of all these other things that are really horrible? No one asked me about the Barbie movie, which was really good, by the way. Actually, Ari mentioned a white savior thing. There's a really great white savior joke in that. So if you get Barbie and you get that joke, you might be halfway on the way to where you should be. The emotional labor that we go with, that's something that comes up when we have to always continually share our stories. So when we talk about truth-telling, you need to understand that truth listening you need to do. It needs to understand that there is something raw whenever we share, which is what Australia is asking us to do at the moment. So the more you know our stories, the more you understand them, the more you engage, the more you're going to hear a complexity, and that's what is key. Yes, there are many stories that involve pain, hurt, and trauma, but then as you engage deeper, you will hear strength and resilience. When you go a little bit deeper, then you're going to hear joy, love, compassion. We are a complex people. If you only engage on a surface level as an ally, you only get a limited understanding. Take that step deeper is what I'm asking people to do. For me, I've been doing a lot of stuff around cultural awareness sessions for a while, and I'm getting a rails up because I do like to ramble on. The burden for us is there's a lot going on with this, with the voice. At the end of the day, our voice doesn't matter, which is so frustrating. Our percentage of the population, we don't get 10 times extra votes over the white fellas. Although we do get free houses and cars and welfare. That's a joke. We don't. To finish, I want to revisit what I mentioned at the start. When I talk about my passion, my underlying element that I'm talking about is anger. But I want you to know where that anger comes from. Anger and passion comes from a place where I feel it here and I feel it in my gut. But the more you engage with our stories, you will understand where that anger comes from, and you will hear it and you will appreciate it rather than sort of rejecting it. Because for us, it's not anger, it's a passion. We want to see our people surviving into the future. So while you're wrapping your head around all these different perspectives of the voice at the same time, we can have complex discussions when you've done your homework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Duncan. And I think that's a really important reminder that for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people right across this continent, this is not an academic, theoretical, abstract, political issue. It's something that is real. It does affect the passions. It affects families. It affects our communities. The other thing that I take out of that, thank you, Duncan, was the essential importance of truth-telling and truth listening that must be at the foundation of whatever we do moving forward. And a call to everyone to be proactive and to do your homework. I'd like now to introduce Sam Eckleston. Sam, I think, is an ally and an advocate and maybe an accomplice. He's a Year 12 student at Hobart College and a community organiser. And when you hear him speak, you'll understand why he is. He's worked with organisations across southern Tasmania, including School Strike for Climate and Working It Out. Sam is driven by a desire to engage with other young people in our political system because he believes that when our voices are heard together, we have a unique ability to achieve tangible change. Please welcome Sam.
Thank you, Greg, for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. Before I speak tonight, I want to pay my respects to the Palawa and Pakana, the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, who've cared for this island, Lutruwita, for more than 65,000 years. I want to pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and pay my respect to those who fought for their country and way of life, and who did not have the opportunity to become elders. For all of us gathered in person today, we sit in Nipaluna, on the banks of Timtumali Mananya, at the base of Kunanyi. This always was, and always will be, Aboriginal land. Sovereignty has never been ceded. When I was approached about participating in this panel, I found myself stuck in a bit of a conundrum. I'm not Aboriginal, nor Torres Strait Islander, and I felt as if I may have been a bit out of place, or out of my depth, discussing a topic with which I have no personal experience. I still feel a bit like that. But as I considered the invitation and discussed the issues and the campaign with family, friends, and people around the community, it struck me just how much of what has been happening over the past several months was familiar to me. Familiar to events that have occurred in campaigns I feel I know better, and to debates I've seen and had on issues affecting my personal identity. Considering the fundamental question of this event, being what does our future look like after the Voice to Parliament referendum, it clicked. I could engage with this issue. I can speak about this issue. Because this issue, even as a topic that, as a white Australian, might not seem like an area appropriate or useful for me to speak on, it's so similar to other debates and issues that can and have affected other parts of our community, including me. My experiences define me as a young person, as a gay man, as a climate organiser, as a community volunteer, as a Tasmanian. They provide me grounds to discuss the voice. Despite this, I'm not going to be speaking tonight in depth to the substance of the Uluru Statement or to the constitutional proposal, because firstly, our other speakers are discussing it in such great length tonight and in such good detail, but again, because I don't think it's really my place. Instead, I want to paint you a picture of how the current referendum campaign is unfolding and how, to my mind, it represents the latest example of an increasingly clear pattern of public debate in this country. A pattern marked in my personal experience by two other issues and debates: the recent climate wars and the 2017 marriage equality plebiscite. These are both issues that, judged by the early attitudes towards them of the general public, should have been notable only for receiving broad bipartisan backing or for the quick speed of their implementation, but that for a number of reasons developed into complicated, divisive, and damaging debates. These two examples have seen different people engaged, have been debated in different forums, have occurred at different points in time, and yet have followed this same path. The question we have to ask then is simple: why? Why did preventing climate disaster move from an issue championed by people on all sides of politics, Richard Nixon, to a multi-decade war between two sides, rife with misinformation? Why did so many viciously oppose giving same-sex couples basic human rights and insist on dragging Australia's queer community through months of public campaigning to have confirmation of something already widely accepted, that Australians supported same-sex marriage rights? Equally, we must now ask why one of the two major political parties in this country is not only unwilling to engage in good faith with one of the most substantive proposals for reconciliation in decades, but is actively working in bad faith to stop its passage. The Voice to Parliament is unique among these issues in one way. There is meaningful opposition and criticism to the proposal within the Indigenous community. The Federal Liberal Party's opposition to the Voice is not built substantively on these criticisms, or at least the criticisms that are most commonly made. We don't see Peter Dutton giving press conferences in federal parliament demanding the Albanese government abandon the Voice and aggressively pursue treaty. That's not what's happening. Each of these issues is so important to a group of people, and by extension, the community. Climate is an issue that affects all of us, but young people, especially Gen Z and millennials, particularly. I know so many young people Even people who would rather stay away from politics with a 10-foot pole on any other issue, who feel passionately about climate action. Same-sex marriage is an issue that directly affects nowhere near as many Australians, but I know that my closeted 12-year-old self was pretty damn affected by the debates that took place in 2017. I know I'm not alone. These issues and the debate that surround them do not happen in a void. They hit people, they hurt people, and people feel them. So when these debates become divisive, even if they are ultimately resolved in a positive way, they have deep, lasting impacts. So again, why? To my mind, the answer is in two words: power and money. The same-sex marriage plebiscite was initiated and championed by Malcolm Turnbull in part in an attempt to safeguard his second attempt at leadership over the Liberal Party. The climate wars effectively began with the first toppling of Malcolm Turnbull as the Liberal Party leader in 2009. And we started because members of the Liberal Party room saw a political opportunity in opposing action on climate change. Going to war with the Rudd government over their signature climate policy provided, in their mind, the first rung on the ladder back from political oblivion after the 2007 Kevin 07 Labor landslide. The climate war made action on climate change a political impossibility in this country for nearly a decade. And the 2023 election only began the first steps of reversing that. Does that sound familiar? Political opportunism wasn't the only factor at play here, though. The role of money, particularly from the fossil fuel industry, in opposing climate action is now well known. But it's by no means the only issue where powerful interests have intervened financially. The right-wing lobby group Advance Australia, the now coordinators of the main No campaign in the Voice to Parliament, are notoriously secretive about their financial dealings, with donations in the hundreds of thousands of dollars being made into their accounts through shell companies. They've made concerted efforts to conceal the identities of their backers. In the donations they have publicly disclosed, Advance, backed by several members of the coalition frontbench, have received funds from conservative business figures, Liberal politicians, and, notably, several organisations based in Queensland who are currently fighting native title claims in court. Be they motivated by money, by power, or whatever else, the impacts of those people or organisations who attempt to sow seeds of division and doubt on these are well documented. The climate wars have stagnated climate policy in this country, and there is an impact from that. There is now a documented condition in climate anxiety among people, a mental health condition from this policy debate. The same-sex marriage plebiscite saw record numbers of calls and requests for support from mental health services around the country. The Voice campaign is already having a similar impact. So what can we do? Whether you support either side of the campaign, there's a number of things you can do to take personal action. Educating yourself, having conversations, and engaging with the campaign. So firstly, on this point of educating yourself, if a campaign and if an issue is being dominated by people engaging in bad faith and with large groups backed by dark money, we need people power. So whether you're supporting the Yes campaign or the No campaign, if you're going out and educating yourself, you're building yourself a factual knowledge base, you've got the tools to go out and address these dark money, bad faith actors. Once you've built yourself a knowledge base, you can go out and have conversations. You can go out and be the active antidote to social media disinformation. And then if you do feel comfortable taking a position on either side of the debate, you can engage with a campaign. Because we know that factors on both sides of these campaigns are engaging big corporate forces. So if these campaigns are being dominated by people power, then that is a really strong antidote to that as well. So as our political system becomes dominated by these repeat examples of dark money and bad faith politics, it's so important that people step up to push back. I support the Yes campaign. I think that's been quite evident. But I think this sentiment must apply regardless. Bad faith politics from either side only demeans, degrades, and damages people from all sides, regardless of their beliefs or your beliefs. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam, for that cogent reminder that The real issues that we are being called upon to consider at the moment in this public debate are too easily concealed by the fog of politics. Something that we all know and we all expect, but it's so easy to be carried along with that fog. And I think that's a really urgent call that Sam gives us to think critically, to empower ourselves and to take action. Our final speaker tonight is a 21-year-old Palawa and Bundjalung woman from Nipaluna, Hobart. Tiana Hogan is studying a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in Sociology, and a Bachelor of Laws at the University of Tasmania. Inspired by her mum, the work she does, and her community, Tiana is politically engaged and passionate about social justice. She's spoken at rallies, including Invasion Day and Change the Date and NAIDOC events, and is an avid Palawakani learner. Welcome, Tiana Hogan.
Yeah, everybody. Waranta takamuna milaidina muanina. Mina Palawakani. Mina kani tunapri ningimpi nangampi nara waringani. Pakana ripana. Puria pumili ningimpi nangampi war. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we gather, the Muanina people. They form part of the southeast nation of Lutruwita, caring for country at and around Nipaluna and alongside the western shore of Timtumili Minanya, the Derwent River. I also pay my respects and gratitude to my elders, past and present. I apologise if anyone's heard me speak recently. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot and probably becoming mildly fatigued from that. But my name is Tiana Hogan. I'm a proud Palawa and Bundjalung woman from Nipaluna, Hobart. Study a Bachelor of Arts, Sociology and a Bachelor of Laws here at the University of Tasmania. I have grown up nurtured by the strong and vibrant Palawa and Pakana Tasmanian Aboriginal community. For as long as I can remember, my mother, Gillian Mundy, has been a journalist for the Koori Mail, the national Indigenous newspaper. Her work exposed me to the stories and political struggles of our community from an early age. When I was 10 years old, my family spent the summer at a protest camp in defence of Kudalaina, a 40,000-year-old Aboriginal heritage site that was eventually destroyed by the government. It's these kinds of experiences that have helped instill in me a passion for my people and country. We were invited to speak tonight to the theme of A Voice for Generations about our aspirations for the future, overcoming Aboriginal disadvantage and achieving reconciliation. Naturally, this necessitates some reference to the three core components of the Uluru Statement from the Heart: voice, treaty and truth. With the ever-approaching referendum, the focus, perhaps unfortunately, is on the voice. I personally do not feel inclined to advocate strongly for either a yes or no vote. I understand and empathise with the various positions taken by Aboriginal people across so-called Australia. There are optimistic yes voters who truly believe a constitutionally enshrined voice is the pathway to justice. There are those who question the merits of the voice but are voting yes because they fear what the outcome of a no result would mean. And there are those voting no with the awareness that we deserve better than a mere advisory body. But I want to make one thing clear, and that's that I'll never empathise with racist no voters, those who are disgruntled by any advancements in Aboriginal justice. Aboriginal people can exercise their sovereignty and voting rights as they see fit. For any voice model to truly work, we must respect the divergence of opinions within our communities, or by design, the voice will fail. Like many others, I question the efficacy of the voice in empowering Aboriginal people and wonder how it is tangibly different from other national Aboriginal representative bodies. The Prime Minister and First Nations Referendum Working Group have affirmed that the voice will only be advisory. Parliament and the executive branch of government do not have to accept the advice of the voice. They are not even compelled to listen to it. Again and again, we have heard yes advocates comfort non-Aboriginal voters with the fact that the voice will have no power. It cannot do something as simple as changing the date of Australia Day, let alone return land, facilitate treaties or deliver services. Yet they make promises that the voice will somehow close the gap. I think this provides some indication that the voice has been diluted to become palatable to non-Aboriginal people and merely appease their conscience. For such a modest proposal that ultimately lacks substance, maybe the ballot should just ask, do you like Aboriginal people, yes or no? Blackfellas have always had a voice. We gather in the thousands every January 26th to protest a racist and insensitive national holiday. Repeatedly, the government has failed to listen. There have been countless reports, recommendations, and royal commissions relating to Aboriginal disadvantage, yet the gaps in our outcomes have not closed. We remain the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are still dying in custody. Our children are still being taken from their families, and our land is still being pillaged. Clearly, engaging Aboriginal people only as advisors to make comments and recommendations is not enough. We need a seat at the decision-making table. Self-determination and recognition and practice of our sovereignty is fundamental to justice. But I did also say I would not advocate for a no vote. I will vote yes under duress. As put by Tarneen Onus-Brown, I am scared of a no vote and the excitement in the bellies it'll give to neo-Nazi movements and far-right group in Australia. I'm scared of the narrative being pursued by racist no voters, that is, that we are somehow undeserving of having a say on the matters that affect us. I do not think our sovereignty is ceded by the flick of a pen and paper. But we must do more. The promise of succeeding treaty or treaties must not be empty. A voice is not the means to our end, a treaty is. 9 and a 2, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiana, and especially for that acknowledgement that at play in this debate is optimism, fear, distrust, and a reminder of the importance of us all having an intolerance for racism. One of the most intriguing things for me that Diana brought up then is that despite the dilution and the politeness of the proposition, in an effort to obtain public support, it's still somehow asking too much for many in the no camp. And also, I thank you for the reminder of the damage that is already occurring as a result of opening this Pandora's box of a public and divisive debate. So these are big challenges for all of us, and I get the feeling that one of the things that's brought all of you here tonight and those of you who have joined us online is a sharing in that disquiet and that concern for the nature of the debate and for somehow or another finding a positive and progressive and constructive way through it. To provide us with the opportunity to explore the optimism maybe a little bit more and to talk about a way forward, I invite all of our speakers to come down to the front and we'll open up some of those challenges that have been touched on. I'd like to start off first of all by going to Sam. Sam, you touched on something that I've been really scratching my head about for a while now, because probably like most of you here, the public debate, ostensibly, on the surface, doesn't really seem to make sense. It seems that there's something else going on, and Sam, you put your finger on something that we all know, we all complain about all the time, and that is the tendency of politicians to be duplicitous, disingenuous, provide us with disinformation rather than clarity and honesty and truth. I'd like to hear from the panellists your thoughts on how we respond to that, because this is a bigger issue. It's not just something at play in relation to the Voice to Parliament referendum. This is something that plays out has played out in plebiscites before around marriage equality. It plays out in relation to climate change, as you reminded us, and it will play out again in other matters of critical importance to us as a community of interest in Australia. How do we disrupt that? Sam, would you like to start off?
Sure. I mean, kind of sort of on the theme that I spoke a little bit about at the end of my speech. That was like kind of winging it a bit, but I think really Australia's greatest strength and our greatest asset as Australians is that we do have a representative democracy, however flawed it might be. And I think that if Australians are more willing to go out and engage in that representative democracy, they're willing to say, well, we are recognising that you as our leaders are not doing what we expect you to do, and you are engaging in that, whether that be by going out and requesting meetings with your members of parliament, whether that be by just writing to them, whether that be by doing more formal activism like holding rallies and events and that sort of thing. But I think that like politicians have become very enclosed in their own little bubble, and that's why they feel like they can get away with so much. And I think that if we are willing to burst that bubble a little bit, we're willing to go out and say, this is not okay, we're expecting something else from you, do better, then I think that's one way we can start to make that change.
Arya, can I ask for your thoughts on how we can get people listening? You made that really important point that Aboriginal people have had a voice for a long time. If politicians are not listening, or if they're misrepresenting our voice, whether it be in promoting a yes or a no vote, what do you suggest that people right around Australia can do about that?
Bring the pressure, keep the pressure. You know, like, I don't want to say it, but peer pressure each other to listen. You know, listen, educate yourself. There is plenty of resources, thousands of articles. There is so much. So I think the thing that I would say, yeah, pressure. Yeah.
Thank you. Duncan, passion makes us, it motivates us, it energises us to be advocates, to be agents of change, but it's also tough. It's been a tough decade, it's been a tough century, it's been a tough couple of centuries. How do we maintain resilience? This is really a question, I guess, for Aboriginal people all around Australia. How do you think Aboriginal Australia has managed to maintain that resilience and keep fighting against unimaginable democratically 97% odds?
I think there's always a fire in our belly, and it just hasn't gone out. And like, it's really great hearing from Tiana and Arya, like the fire in the belly is in the young'uns, and I don't want to be here in 10 years' time watching these two saying the same stuff, because that's not, like, it's hard enough for our elders past and present. Why do we want to see our elders in the future going, why am I saying the same stuff that everyone else said, that Mick said, that Marshall Langton said, that Charlie Perkins said? Like, these two should just be able to go and do their thing and not have to continually have that fire in the belly. It's always going to be there. It's something that our resilience just comes from, something that we know that we want to be properly heard by people. It's not something that ever goes away, but they shouldn't have to take on that job into the future.
Thanks, Duncan. And Tiana, I heard from you, and I hear from some of the other panelists, and I hear from a lot of people out there in the community that people are distrustful, fearsome, concerned, not convinced. but may well, when it comes time to walk into that polling booth and pick up the pencil and make the mark on the paper, vote yes out of fear for the alternative. That's not a great situation to be in. That's a fairly backhanded version of democratic power. What do we do regardless of a yes or no outcome? What do we do after the referendum? Is there something is there a common thing that we all need to focus on, whether or not there's a yes or no vote?
I think the obvious answer there is probably treaty. I think that's the word that comes out of everyone's mouth. But I've been reflecting lots on what campaigning for, I guess, either side, and particularly if the yes vote doesn't get up, and we construct the three core components of the Uluru Statement from the Heart as being progressive and necessary. If a no result happens, I guess we can't lose sight of treaty. And if no result is what happens, it can't be a distraction from continued progress. Because that is becoming an increasing reality. We're looking at the polling around Tasmania done by newspapers, and particularly up north, it seems to be an issue. So I think we need to consider the dialogue we're using and the way we talk about the statement from the heart, because it's becoming increasingly clear that, yeah, possibly a no result might be the future.
Do any of the panellists have a question for any of the other panellists?
I'm going to say that, Tiana, like, your alternative to what should be on the ballot, take that away, folks, because that was gold. Like, that is just, I can't say anything else ever after that. You win. Oh, right, yeah.
Look, it's 8 minutes past 7, and far too often in these events with wonderful speakers like we have, we run out of time, and the audience don't get the opportunity that they're hoping for to ask questions.
Chris is my name. Question for you, Arya. When you spoke about the voice, you talked about it as a government initiative without acknowledging that in fact it was an Aboriginal-led process of regional dialogues and a national conference that led to the creation of the Uluru Statement. Now, my question to you is, do you think what we'll be voting on later this year honours that process or not?
Hi, Chris. Nice to see you. Look, the statement from the heart, that is where it came from, but I wouldn't call the voice a grassroots initiative, and I think that it is important that it should have been a grassroots initiative. If we're going to the effort of enshrining it in the Constitution and having a nationwide vote, I think it should have come from more of a widespread sort of position.
Thank you. I have more of a comment than a question, really. I just wanted to express my gratitude and thanks for the panel and for this event, that I know it's a hard slog, and I appreciate that it's an emotional labour for you all to be educating us, and I just wanted to say thanks.
We'll go to an online question from Stuart Barry. Stuart writes, it's been suggested that the voice is a necessary first step to a treaty, as without the first step, the treaty will never get up. Stuart's interested in to hear panellists' views on that. Tiana, would you like to start off?
I guess it's the first step in making clear that white people have, or non-Aboriginal people have, some empathy towards our causes. I don't know that it's ever been the first step for us. I guess we do have to acknowledge that that the Uluru Statement did have that as the first step, but from what I've heard, there's been a few comments about what happened at those regional dialogues, and if there was agreement about the 3 steps and the order they go in.
My perception, kind of drawing back to the comment I made about the correlations between the 2017 marriage equality plebiscite and the now voice campaign that's happening, it seems a bit like it's turning into the same things happening in this debate as happened in the 2017 debate, where instead of being a debate about the policy proposal that's on the table, it's more like, does the broad Australian community approve of X minority within the community? And where treaty is a really important part of like meaningfully addressing the issues of Indigenous Australia, the Voice campaign is probably turning into a necessary prerequisite for treaty now that it's happening, because governments, if the Voice campaign fail, will be like, oh, well, Australians don't want to engage with Indigenous issues because it is too politically difficult and they don't want to go near it. So I don't want to say that it's a prerequisite in all circumstances, but now that we have this in front of us, I think for governments to want to go after it, go after treaty, I think that if the Voice campaign fails, that will now be more difficult. But I don't know what the circumstances would have been if Voice had never been put to a referendum. I think the circumstances could have been quite different.
Hi, my name's Vera, and I'd also like to thank all of the panellists who have come in tonight. I also want to agree with Stuart, who just made that comment about having a voice and then having a treaty. The reason that I bring that up is because my workplace had a couple of ladies who were part of the Yes 23 group. They're also Palawa ladies, and they said that you can't have a treaty without a voice first. I'm only relaying to you what they said, and they said if the No campaign wins, then we will probably be put back up by about 10 years or more to be able to get a voice heard again. But what happened after that, after the talk that they gave us, talking amongst the other team members, one young lady who's probably in her late 20s, I think, she said it's interesting that in her extended group of friends, no one has brought up a conversation about this Voice to Parliament. They don't see anything in social media, which is what they're on. They don't watch free-to-air TV. They use streaming services, and there's nothing to bring this campaign to the forefront of their minds to talk about. So I guess my question is, how would we expect for the Yes campaign to get up and win if young people are not engaging themselves to learn and inform themselves and do the homework when they're, I guess, expecting to see things more in their face, like on social media or wherever they're engaged. Okay. How are we going to get that group of people to be more informed about either the Yes or No campaign?
Thank you very much. So for the younger students on the panel, how can this public debate reach out to and engage your peers? Do you agree that it's not already doing that? If not, how can we fix that? Sam, would you like to start off?
Sure. I won't speak to the next question, I promise. Yeah, I think that, we'll talk anyone's ear off who'll listen, and most of my friends know that I have been quite frustrated with how the Yes campaign especially has gone about some of its campaign work. And I don't think that's an indictment on the campaign team in Tasmania. Marta is excellent, and a bunch of the other organisers as well. But I think the national campaign has been really poor, and it's been really badly run. And I think that engagement with young people, who will be such a key constituency in a potential successful Yes coalition, engagement with young people has been really poor. And I think that social media engagement is a really big part of that. And I think that the Yes campaign, the Yes, like if you go into the Yes social, if you go into the Yes Instagram page, like a whole bunch of their work is about, oh, like pledge to vote yes if you're already a committed Yes supporter. And you'll see paid ads to that extent. And that's about all that's going on. It's not like, oh, do you not know what the voice to Parliament is? Well, it's going up to a vote. Here's what you need to know. Like, here's why you should support it. So yeah, I think it's really just a desire to like actually go out and do the work, bring young people on board, give them control of the keys sort of thing. If you want a campaign to be successful, let the people who are in that demographic do the work, but do the work regardless.
Arya, are online influencers throwing their weight around here and having an impact?
Absolutely not. I would say, yeah, online influencers, I haven't seen anyone really do anything. You know, they have such a big platform that it is such a good, it's such a good opportunity for them to help educate. And I think advice to the yes or no campaign, people would be probably to try and reach out to those sort of people, because it is where our society is moving. A lot of our stuff is online now. And I think definitely going towards a more online area would be valuable. As well as this, I mean, if you're talking about engaging young people, what are all young people doing? Going to school. So I feel like, you know, that's quite a common denominator there. And I would say more education or education programs within schools would also be really valuable, because I find that a lot of my peers don't really understand or grasp or have the resources to educate themselves.
Thanks, Arya. We'll go to an online question before we come back to the live audience. And it's a question from Yabo Thompson, and anyone who's been in Tasmania for a while will know that Yabo is a seasoned social campaigner. Yabo's asking, why is it when there's so much awareness and resources available that people don't understand how to be proactive? So I guess this is a similar question to the one before, but we're talking much more broadly now. What is it that's holding people back? Are people just feeling like they, as somebody said before, Sam, I think, that, you know, are people hesitant about speaking on something that they don't have lived experience of? Are people lazy, complacent? Are people happy to be told what to think?
I think people are scared of making mistakes. I would say for young people, let them figure it out. I'm more worried about people are really ingrained in their ideas. Young people get the idea like what Sam talked about with the plebiscite. People see when people are treated rough, and people can figure that out themselves. I think you engage with people that you know and make mistakes. You're better off having a conversation with racist Uncle Frank, and he'll go there and you'll go, oh, but then there's this. And if you make a mistake, I'd rather you make a mistake than not. If you sit there and be silent, that's the biggest mistake, because then you're not having a conversation. And anyway, like Uncle Frank's probably long gone anyway. Have a conversation with someone's on the fence, and like have a dialogue and make that mistake, but then go, right, how do I then go back and do a bit more homework? Because yeah, being silent that's huge. That's really huge.
So there's the call to action. Take a risk.
Yeah.
Go out there and take a risk. It's worth it. We'll have one more question from the studio audience.
Thank you. My name is Adel Youssef. I'm Palestinian. I have a lot of disquiet in my heart. I'm very troubled. The politicians talk about the voice, talk about recognition of wrongs, horrendous, atrocious wrongs done in the past to the Aboriginal people of this land. And yet, as a state, we support Israel, an avowed apartheid, racist, colonial, murderous state. We have John Howard and Bob Hawke, who have forests named after them. Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd. Kevin apologized to the Aboriginals. In the next month, the first time in Australian history, Israel was celebrated. The founding year of Israel was celebrated in the Australian Parliament. I feel great disquiet. Am I a fool? Am I being taken for a fool? Is this all a farce? Because we say one thing internally and we do another thing externally. And I'd especially like to talk to the young people afterwards. With Greg Lehman, we provide presentations about the parallels of colonizing Palestine and Australia. So please tell me, am I a fool?
Thank you for the question. This really brings up an issue of trust, and I think a number of the panelists have expressed their lack of confidence, their concern that even if Aboriginal people are listened to, it won't translate into action. Is this and as the question put, I think the question points out that there are bigger issues against which the Voice to Parliament question is being judged by the people who get to make the decisions, who are in power. So just perhaps a quick vox pop from the panel. Are you confident that the public of Australia, through this referendum, can call the government to account?
We'll get a percentage. We'll know there's a percentage out there that will support it. It's so complex because so much goes to trust, and that's why I'm a big fan of making mistakes and having conversations with people. And we're looking sometimes at big pictures when we forget that there's simple little things, and simple little things are powerful because when we have conversation, we'll pick up when you make a mistake, but we know when it comes from a genuine place or when it comes from an ignorant place. And then I know how that conversation is going to work. But we look for simple things amongst each other, then that affects change. That's always my sort of play.
We might finish up with one last question that came in online, and that was really just to ask the panelists what do you want to see in the future? I think one of you already talked about a just and fair Australia. What are the other things that you want to see as the futurists?
I wanted people to open their eyes and open their minds a bit. I think we've come a long way. Australia is a much more progressive country than it used to be, but I think there is still a lot of closed-mindedness here. And I think that if the Yes campaign fails, I think that will be a big part of why. And I think that if treaty fails to be a acceptable political topic to the extent that governments don't want to pursue it, that will be because of a failure of people to be open-minded. So I'd like Australians to be open-minded, to think broader, to think beyond their own little bubble a bit sometimes.
Tiana?
I guess put simply, treaty, land returns, Aboriginal governance and prison abolition.
Just stronger relationships so we can have those discussions around treaty so people understand where it comes from. Just relationships.
Yeah, pretty much what everyone else just said. Treaty, if that hasn't been clear enough, we want treaty, please.
Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, audience online and here with us this evening. I'm sure you'll all join with me in thanking our panelists tonight, Tiana Hogan, Duncan Robinson, Sam Eckleston and Arya Ritz. This evening's talk will be available soon as a video and podcast via the Island of Ideas website. Find the latest information on our upcoming events via our Island of Ideas webpage, and you can see the link on the screen now. You'll also find details of how to register for upcoming Island of Ideas sessions on the Voice to Parliament. We have 2 more panels at the end of August 31, and then a final panel on September the 25th, and we have a fairly powerful lineup of speakers, including Michael Mansell, Noel Pearson and Marcia Langton, just to name a few. And if that won't get you along to the Stanley Burbury Theatre, I don't know what will. Please join us tomorrow for the next Island of Ideas talk. Learn from global expert on international humanitarian law and previous Director of International Policy at the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva, Dr. Helen Durham, AO. She'll deliver a talk entitled The Future Battlefield, Is There a Place for Humanity? For the 2023 Red Cross oration. Please join us for that. You can use the link on your screen to register for that event now. Once again, thank you to Tiana, Sam, Duncan and Arya, and to you all for taking part in this special event. On behalf of the University of Tasmania and the Island of Ideas team, have a happy and safe evening.